Hello, welcome to Single Mom on a Farm. Today I am really excited to show you some of my homeschool curriculum that I have been making over the past few years. People have been asking me since last summer, and so I am finally getting this video together to show you. And I printed a few things off for you to see, and I'll show a few things that are on my computer. And thank you so much for being interested. I'm excited that I'm finding some homeschoolers who may be interested in some of the products that I make and sell. First up are my geography worksheets. It's just two worksheets, $1.50, you can get both of them. There's one for a country fast facts, and you can use a book like this travel book. We actually bought it back when we had some homeschool money provided by the state as by Lonely Planet Kids. You can use any encyclopedia that you get from the library or buy a used book or anything you want. And so this book is nice. It just has like some of the facts, like the population and some, interesting, fascinating facts. It has a picture of the flag and things like that for each country. And so you just fill out your paper by the population, money, government, some food. You can do the map and the flag. They can draw an animal or landmark, write some famous people, and then any facts that you are reading to them from the book, or the kids can look it up on their own, or you can also just use like Wikipedia or anything online. And then there's the state fast facts also. I'll go a little bit more in depth, but you can also just apply it with the country one. So this is an example of a page filled out by little Miss Tilly. This was Missouri. So you can plan how you want. You can do like 2 states a week for the whole school year, or you can do like 1 or 2 states a day and try to do like countries and states in 1 year. And when you're done with the pages, we just 3-hole punch them and stick them in a binder like this, and you have them all in here so that they're all together. And we have her art projects in here also, and music notes. Here is the book that we're using. We're actually using several books, and these are all from the library. I don't have any myself. This one just says the 50 states on it, and you can open to a page, and the kids like to read out loud the things that they find that are interesting, and then all of the other kids will grab their sheets and start writing them down. So for example, they might learn about these black walnuts here. There are lots of famous people all along the outside. There are usually like movie stars or sports stars, historical figures, authors like Mark Twain. Here there's something about Dolly Parton, and you can look this up. It's some Dixie Stampede, so you might want to Google that and look it up and like show a video of it, and the kids will think that's interesting. So you are welcome to like go through this, and the kids will write it down. Usually like the older kids are calling things out, and everyone's writing it down, and they're feeling proud that they were one to find some interesting facts. And so they write them down in the fascinating facts over here. But first they've already written the nickname, the population, capital, biggest city, the state bird, the state motto, and any popular food. And you could draw the flag in this box and the map over here. And then they write down what state it is, and then the year that it became a state. Again, here is Tilly's finished one. And she gets tired of writing, and the kids are going so fast, the older ones, because we have high schoolers down to 2nd graders in my homeschool group, or our family. And so she'll write some, and sometimes I'll just add in some extra things that they're reading out loud quickly. And it's great for all ages. And so even if you have a little one, if that's all they want to do is like draw the arch, or maybe build it out of Legos, build it with blocks, build it out of Play-Doh, that's all they know is that there's a St. Louis arch, the gateway to the west, then like that's awesome, because that's just great that they've learned one thing from Missouri. Then you can also pick out tons of books. So like you can learn all about Mark Twain, or you can read Huckleberry Finn or anything. You can read The Rose Years, which is Rocky Ridge Farm. It's the next series after Little House on a Prairie. So it's when Laura marries Almanzo and takes Rose to Missouri, and they build up a farm there. And there's a big series of books, and I sell the book studies that go along with it, and I'll explain those in a minute. But those are great read aloud books. You can learn about Scott Joplin. I think he was over here somewhere. I saw him. And that's really fun, a really fun guy to learn about. This book is also another one, but you can get any book you want from the library that has fascinating facts about the states. This book is really similar. So here's also the Missouri page, and we'll also have former presidents that live there, and the state bluebird and flower. And there's Scott Joplin. So you can listen to his songs. You can learn all about him and his like biography. You can make the food that was invented there, or the food that they're famous for, like Kansas City barbecue sauce or something. You can sing. They suggest Meet Me in St. Louis. You can watch the movie. You can just put on the song for them while they're, filling in their flag or drawing a landmark. Anyway, so you can do as much or as little as you want. You can spend like half an hour on it, or you can spend 2 hours on it, studying authors, musicians, artists, doing a lot of art projects. And I'm going to finish writing my curriculum for that, so that I'll give you all the things you will want to do, like list all the books and art projects and artists and stuff. But for now, I'm just selling these 2 pages, and you can find them out yourself. You can just decide what you want to study the most, and let your kids, what if they're really interested in the Titanic? Here's a Titanic museum. So maybe they want to go further in depth in that, and they might go down a rabbit trail and just like study that for a really long time. So that's why it's super flexible and really fun and tailored to each student. So sometimes I will have a kid going into the Titanic stuff, and maybe another kid studying Scott Joplin, somebody else, studying the history of the ice cream cone. And if you have as much food as you can from it, that's great. And even if your 3 and 4-year-olds, if that's all they do is eat the ice cream cone and draw an arch, then they'll know, a couple of things about St. Louis. So that is about all for the geography sheets. I'll just show you the quick summary. So they're cheap and easy, they're super flexible, and they're for all ages. So you just print them out, one for each student, for each state that you're studying or country. So that's all you need is some paper and ink. You can find lots of read aloud books to read to your kids. So you'll go further in depth and learn a lot about that state. Like I said, you can read Mark Twain books or something. You can cook the regional foods. So you can either cook things that the state is famous for, like Michigan is famous for the Mackinac Island fudge, or you can cook food that the state invented, like Kellogg's. So you can eat any Kellogg's cereal or something, and it helps to bring the state to life and helps the kids know where things came from. You can study so many different kinds of people. There are authors, scientists, movie stars, sports stars, historical figures, previous presidents, musicians, artists, kid heroes, and so many more people that are mentioned in these books. And anyone that you can even look up on Google if you want, who is from Kansas or anything like that. And there's tons of movies to watch that are set there. You could sing. If you're doing Illinois, you could sing Just Flew In from the Windy City from Calamity Jane. There's always, I'm sure, songs that are popping into your head about a state. For science, you can study animals that are from that state or live in the state. You can study the topography of the state, landmarks like the natural ones or the man-made ones. You can study engineering and the weather, the climate of that area. So it covers pretty much every subject except math. So you can cover history, science, reading, language arts, art, cooking, and math. There are plenty of opportunities. I usually just give my kids a math book anyway, on the side, so they still have to do math in addition to doing these. This is pretty much covers every other subject, but I still have them do their own math books at the level. But I still find lots of math opportunities in here, and if you didn't want to do math on the side, I can figure out how many people per square mile. And I'll also have them compare things. For example, I'll say, okay, Vermont, today we learned that they have 647,000 people. So Massachusetts has 7 million people, which one is greater? And we can divide them by the area, and you can say which one has more people per square mile. And we can compare it with Wyoming or Vermont. Vermont, the ones that don't hardly have very many people per square mile. Things like that. So there is plenty of math, and you can say how long has the state been a state for, by having them learn how to subtract years. And it's really good for them to learn math in real life like this, and why you'd want to know it. I think that's all for my state and country facts, the geography worksheets. after you've printed them out, they've just made a nice little notebook like this that your kids can keep forever and to know a lot of cool things about some different places in our world. Next up, I will show you one of my book studies. So this example is Bo at Ballard Creek. So I just get a book from the library. This one happens to be from Alaska, and so we read it when we were studying Alaska this year. And you read the book out loud to your students, or you can have them read it to themselves and do this packet by themselves. So either way, I've always just done it as a read aloud. So I read it to them, and you can either read a chapter at a time and then fill out the questions, or you can read like 3 or 4 chapters a day. They're pretty short, and then have them, fill out their packet. So here's an example of the packet. So you download it electronically and then print it out. You can print it out double-sided or single-sided. I did double-sided just to save some paper for showing you. And here's an explanation of everything that's in the packet. Here is a list where you write the characters and a description of them, because there's a lot of characters in this book. It helps you keep track of who's who. So I have some questions for them to listen to, like comprehensive questions. And they can either write these down, write down their answer by themselves, or you can ask them out loud and write down the answers, or just ask them out loud and not even write them down. I like to write them down and like just make notes of anything we did and the dates, and I put it in my homeschooling scrapbook because I just love to go back and see the different books we read and the different answers kids were giving. It just is kind of like a scrapbook journal. Good memories for me and my homeschool, for bonding with my kids. So do whatever works out for you. So there's some questions and some activities. These are all optional, and they have to do with the book. So it says, find out what animals birth their babies but don't raise them. Learn about the 1897 Klondike Gold Rush that they mentioned in the first chapter. Learn what a scow is. Think of something good that happened to you this week and think backwards about it. Write about it in your journal or diary. So that's something that Bo does. So you'll just have to read the book. The activities and the questions will make more sense, obviously. And sometimes I have more thinking questions. So first, the comprehensive questions is, what did Arvid name Bo? What name would Hank have named Bo? And then if you were to adopt a little girl, what would you name her? And these are just kind of fun. Like I said, usually I do these out loud instead of having my kids write them down. And it's just a fun to go around asking everybody. So like Andy said, he would have named his little girl Rebecca, which I've never really heard him play with baby names. Like, my girls are always talking about what names they'd name their babies. So it's kind of fun to ask boys or, the whole group. They can sometimes have chances like write their own chores. Then again, there's more activities. So everything is optional. You don't have to do everything. This is just optional activities. And if they're doing it, these are things that you could do too. So in the story, Bo makes biscuits, and then she sticks out her tongue in concentration and she cuts them out. So it's like fun just to act like Bo and to feel like her. And they have mentioned songs that they're listening to on their gramophone. So I suggest you can look them up and listen to them so you know what Bo is listening to. And again, sometimes I don't do any. It's a busy day, we don't do any. And then other times we might do like all of them. So these are what my book studies are like. Some questions to fill out and lots of options for activities. They're priced very low. They're usually only about $4. So even if you did only 2 activities, this whole book, say you just made donuts like they do and put on a little fair, like the only 2 things you do, it is still worth it because you had a great time, and your kids are going to remember this book just by doing those kinds of activities. So that's my favorite part of them. I'll show you all the ones I have here on my computer. So for my language arts ones, these are all my book studies, and they're all really similar. So you read the novel study, maybe A Lantern in Her Hand is more for high schoolers to read on their own. But most of the other ones are for elementary school or middle school, and we read them all together. Even my high schoolers will listen in, and they think they're cute. So I have individual ones, and then I'll have a series. Like I have all 4 Betsy Tacy books, and then I'll have the series where you can buy all 4 of them. There's Bo at Ballard Creek. A couple of Calpurnia Tate books, the first and second one. Then I have a lot of Eleanor Estes books like Ginger Pie and Pinkie Pie. I have 4 Mrs. Pigglewiggle books. I have 4 The Little House on Rocky Ridge that I was talking about, where they live in Missouri. Those are one of my favorite series. There's the Mrs. Piggle Wiggle books. And those activities are probably geared more from like kindergarten or preschool to 2nd or 3rd grade. But again, they're really fun. And just things you might not have thought of doing, like feeding your kid, putting food on a rake and raising it up and feeding them through the window, like one of the kids in the book does. And it just makes the kid really enjoy school. And it helps you have a fun time too. There are a lot of fun activities. There's some field trips usually mentioned in them. And then some of my other projects, moving on from the book studies. But if you have any questions with the book studies, feel free to ask me. So you pretty much just download them and then have them work on questions or activities. And a lot of them have vocabulary words. This book didn't really have vocabulary words. It's a pretty easy reader, but most of the other ones have vocabulary words for them to look up. And then mainly just the activities. Mostly the food that they eat is really fun, or the games that they're playing, old-fashioned games or anything else. Making up your own rhyme if they're rhyming in the book. Things you just might have not thought of, I came up with them for you. And I write them down for you to be able to do. And again, don't feel like you have to do all of them. Okay, moving on to a few other things. I have some science things. These are like Google Slide or PowerPoint presentations. I have a meteorology course, and you just have to buy the book, which you can get at a used bookstore or just get it from the library. And then I have a lot of lessons. That one is pretty, not like strenuous, but it's pretty difficult. So it's really good for a middle school or a high schooler who's really interested in meteorology. It's just 1 semester. I really like that one. Again, you just print it out. There's my music curriculum. I'll explain that in a minute because it usually goes with my full 20th century. And there's my Google Slides. I have 5 Google Slide presentations. I'll show you the 7 Summits one. So the 7 Summits one, you can just push play and down here I will have like some notes that you can read to your kids, to your students. So this can be good for public school or homeschooler. And pretty much all of them can be adapted to public school also, like these ones. If you want to, have your students print this out for them and have them do it, that's fine. And of course, you're not gonna be able to make biscuits at school, but there are some activities and games you can do at school. And there's a lot of art projects in there also. A lot of painting pictures and sketching a bear when Bo gets chased by a bear, things like that. So it's great for anyone. So anyway, back to the 7 Summits. You can obviously put it in slideshow mode, and then it will, each thing will fly in by itself. But here's just an example of, there's some fast facts, there's some fun facts, there's the history of climbing, there's climbing the mountain, how fast it would take, the best times to climb and how far it is and things like that. Here are the records. The youngest boy was 6, the youngest girl was 7, the oldest was 88 and 89. Somebody's crawled it with no arms and legs. Somebody hiked it in a wheelchair. So those are really fun. And there's pictures of hikes. So it has all 7 summits. And again, it's a lot better when you're doing in slideshow mode and things are flying in. So that's just really fun. So I have a couple slides, things like that. Last but not least is my 20th century curriculum. And this is my absolute favorite one that I've ever written. It's my kids' favorite also. My college kids always talk about the years that we've studied the 20th century were their favorite and the most memorable. So first thing you do is to get this book. It's Millennium Children's History of the 20th Century. I got it used, I think back in like 2010 or something, and it's gotten definitely used. And then you print off all these sheets that I have that are included when you buy this curriculum. It's another all-in-one curriculum where it teaches everything but math. So each day the student will grab their paper. I just printed them off for the whole entire year, and I printed off 5 or 6 per year, and I did double-sided so that they're all ready and in a stack. So every morning 5 or 6 kids, or how many kids are doing it, will just grab it. And they'll take turns with this book. And so while one kid's using it, someone else does their math or practices the piano or something like that. So they can just go through here by themselves and write down anything that was interesting. Any of their sort of the fascinating facts, news I found interesting up here, and then something that they wanted to study a little bit more in depth. Down here, there are some things about world events, entertainment innovations. There's a lot of different things that they could be writing. And so you write those in some of these ones. So maybe like Shirley Temple would be under entertainment in the 30s if she was just in a play or something like that. And this is kind of geared for like a newspaper. So it will say January 22nd, after short illness, Victoria, Queen of Britain, died today. So it's like a newspaper. And so they might find that interesting. Kylie, I remember love to look up more about her because she loves the kings and queens. So anyway, you just go through this for every year is one thing that they do. And then you do the other things that I have in the daily lesson plans. So this curriculum is full daily lesson plans and tell you every single thing what you need to do. That's what I'm working on for my geography. But so far for the geography, I just have the worksheets done. I haven't finished like the exact day-to-day things. But for this 20th century one, I have. So this is just a sample of week 10. So you do the 1927 work note sheet and then they can check it off the box. Then I read to my students. There's a few things in a decades book, which explains it in here. You can also get it from the library. It just goes along with what they've learned from 1927. And then you'll do a music lesson on Monday and an art lesson on Fridays. And every single day has some suggestions of things you could cook. Things that were invented in 1927, which were popular foods. So pepperoni rolls were popular and Chef Boyardee was invented. So I'm not encouraging, because a lot of things in the 1900s were processed foods that were invented, a lot of packaged things. So I'm not encouraging, to eat a lot of it, but it's fun to even just get one little can of Chef Boyardee something and serve it with your regular dinner. Just so they know what Chef Boyardee is, because my kids have never eaten it before. And it's fun to learn about the company and how they started. And then there are some activities. So you can read Charles Lindbergh books, and I suggest all the books that I've already looked up. These are all like picture books that you can read to your kids or have them read on their own time. Maybe when another student is doing their note sheet, then the other kids can be reading one of these books at their desk or on the couch. It's just things that were mentioned in this book I've pulled out and suggested you go a little bit more deeper. And then there's my list for things to do on Tuesday, the 1928 note sheet. Things that were invented in 1928, Gerber baby food, horseshoe sandwiches, Reese's peanut butter cups, milk duds. Some activities to watch Steamboat Willie, turn on your air conditioning or go into an air-conditioned building because air conditioning was invented. So just some things like that. There's Thursday, there's Friday. So Friday here is the art guy, is Walt Disney. So I have the whole biography for you to read to your students, or they can read it to themselves if you're just letting, like a high schooler do this by himself. There's some examples of pictures, and here are some books that you could read all about Walt Disney. And there's some activities. They can draw like him. There's some animation videos I suggest, and some links to a song that talks about Walt Disney. So I've got a ton of information for you, and I'll show you the music portion. So on Mondays, I'll tell you to do the music, week number 10, Woody Guthrie, and any accompanying activities. And I don't list it here because I'm selling the music curriculum separately also. I've got a lot of people interested in just buying the music curriculum and not doing this whole 20th century. So I have it as a separate packet, but it's still included. If you buy this one, it's included with it. So for the music, it's a little bit more in depth than the artist. And because the artist is on Friday, I just have a little bit shorter and they can spend more time doing the art project. For the music, then I'll give the teacher instructions. I have a teacher packet and a student packet for each music lesson. So I'll say to read the biography to your students and they can take notes. So here's his biography, his whole life. And then I have some links to some songs that he wrote and some songs you can listen to. And here's just some suggestions of songs to listen to, some books you can read about Woody Guthrie. And then here's a whole bunch of activities you can also do. Learning about Huntington's disease, eating Depression-era foods like cornbread and dandelion salad, things like that. learning about the Titanic because he wrote a song about Titanic. Here is week 11 for the music. So I don't always do musicians. I'll sometimes do things like swing dancing. So this was popular in the 20s and 30s and 40s. So I teach you, or you teach your students a little bit about the Charleston and the Lindy Hop. There's a lot of websites, links I give you, and the Balboa swing dance. And then you guys can do them. Here is a week at a glance tables. So you can just look to see what you're going to be doing this week. So Monday is 1927. And those are the pages to read in the Decades book. There's also a book called Centenarians you can get from the library or buy very cheaply used. Those are stories about people who have lived to 100 years old, and then they'll talk about things that happened in the 20s and 28 and 29. And see, they don't talk about every single year, so I don't mention it every single year. But that's just a sort of an extra thing. You can also read aloud to your students. There's so much in this curriculum, way more than you could possibly do. So don't feel overwhelmed. These are just suggestions for something that might fit your family or classroom. And then there's the musicians, Woody Guthrie. The artist on Friday would be Walt Disney. There's the things that you can cook, options of things you can cook or buy at the store if for like a treat, because Twizzlers maybe were invented in 1929, so that might be fun. And then down here, I pencil in who's going to help me each day or each week. I had a child in charge of the cooking for the whole week, and I'd write their name down, and they were allowed to help pick out a few things like at the store to buy, like the Twizzlers or the food to make. And then I wrote which read aloud book we're going to read, and I'll explain that in a minute from our reading list. So that was week 10. Here's week 11. Like I said, mentioned like the music is swing dancing, the Lindy Hop and Balboa. And again, there's the cooking things and the history. So these are just week at a glance of all the things so you'll be prepared to do for the week. And here would be the note sheets that the students fill out for that week. And then again, here's like, the daily lesson plan. So you could just go down day by day of all of the things. And then there's like the Friday artist. Like I think I already showed you this. So hopefully you kind of understand. I have so many tips for the parents. This is the second week when we studied Dorothea Lange. She was really fun to study, and books and things to study. So there's lots of suggestions for parents and so many awesome activities and material to cover. So pick and choose what you want to do the most because it's all super fun. At the beginning of the packet, I tell you all the books that you need. So there's really just the one that you can buy, and then the rest are sort of optional. You can either get it at the library. They're just pretty much, if you have lots of time, I want to do a very thorough job with this. And there's some extra resources that I tell you about. There's some shows that I mentioned, like The Food That Built America. And I tell you which season and which episode it would be on. So I've done all that work for you. If you want to study about the ice cream cone or the corn dog, I will show you which episode it is if you want to watch how it was invented, if you have extra time for that. There's a lot of recipes. There's just a lot of other websites. I tell you where I got my maps, hang on the wall. So this is a very cheap class. Could be about $150 to $200, and you'd be teaching your whole entire family for that. And most other curriculums are like $500 or $600 per student. And so this would just be $200 or $300 for your whole family. And that includes, like, if you bought binders for this, all the printing it all out, if you bought all the textbooks new and the maps, and extra food like the candy and packaged foods. Like I said, includes all of these subjects, so you can look at this when you buy it. And lots of notes for the teacher, and how to incorporate all grades. So I do K through 12, all my students. This is like a family, very fun bonding class that we all do together. And I don't, of course, require very much for the kindergarten first grader. If they just want to eat the foods with us and do some of the art projects, that's totally fine. And then the older kids will go really in depth and learn a lot, more about the scientists and other things like that. Here's how to implement it. And the week at a glance tables, like I already showed you. I'll show you the book list now. So it comes with a book list, all of the fun chapter books for each decade. And so one year when we did it, I had this children sign their initials, which ones they wanted to get. And then they were in charge or responsible for putting them on hold before, like, we're going to be studying it so that they'd be ready at the library. So I just had them do their initials at the beginning of the year so that we knew, which books they'd be reading. But you can also just do these as read aloud. So you can read them to your kids or have them read them on their own, depending on their ages. Or if you want a family read aloud, or if you just want them to read it. So I have a page pretty much for every decade. And that is included in this course also, or I sell it separately. That is all for my 20th Century. It is a phenomenal course. Like I said, I highly recommend that one more than any other one because of the memories, the fun times we had together. Like during the 50s, we always get TV dinners, even though they're disgusting. It's just fun to get a TV dinner and watch like Leave It to Beaver or whatever shows were on in the 50s. It's just, just fun to act out those times. And in the 40s, we had like blackout drills, and that was really fun. Just the things you could do as a family. I have all those suggestions in the book, and they're just great. And that's what my kids remember the most, is cooking the foods that they ate all through the 20th century and acting out some of their events. It's just really fun. So I highly suggest that class. But if you have any other questions about any of my book studies that are really simple and cheap, like I said, even if you only do a few of the activities out of them, then they're totally worth it. If you have any questions about my PowerPoint presentations or any other things, just shoot me an email, marcy@singlemomanafarm.com. And good job homeschooling your kids. Keep it up. It's so much fun. I just hope you enjoy it and not push the scholastic part of it so much, but just enjoy, love teaching your kids, spending time with them, watching them learn and grow, learning and growing yourself, picking out books and activities that mean something to you, that you're interested in. If it's like hiking, go do that. Whatever it is that makes school really enjoyable and makes life really fun for you and your family. Keep up the great work. Thanks. Bye-bye.